LSU could be down a starting offensive lineman against South Carolina. So, who do they replace him with? We'll talk about it. Locked on LSU. Here we go.
You are Locked On LSU, your daily podcast on the LSU Tigers. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Okay, let's get it. It is Locked On LSU, your team every day. I'm your host, Matt Moscona. Thanks so much for making us your first listen. We're free, available wherever you get great podcasts. Of course, on YouTube as well, so please subscribe. As always, one of the fastest ways to help us grow is by leaving your comments below, so thank you sincerely for that. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Right now, new customers can bet just $5, and if your first bet wins, you'll get $300 in bonus bets to use across the app. So download the FanDuel app today. The initial participation report has been released for Week 7 in college football in the SEC. And for LSU, it is a bit concerning, but not altogether unexpected. You might recall a week ago when LSU was on the bye, we shared with you some info. If you're an everydayer, you heard it. Shout out to you. That they expected to have Weston Davis back, but left guard Paul Mubenga with that high ankle sprain was going to be a little bit more challenging to get him ready to go against South Carolina. Well, Paul Mubenga now on the initial SEC participation report listed as doubtful for the game against South Carolina. Now, Aaron Anderson officially is questionable, and then both Ahmad Breaux and Caden Durham are probable. Now, it's the first time we've seen Ahmad Breaux pop up on the injury list, and we did not hear what the injury was to Ahmad Breaux. Now, keep in mind, on that defensive line, you're already thin. Gabe Relaford is out for the rest of the season with a shoulder injury at tackle. Ahmad Breaux has been part of really a 4 or 5 man rotation on the interior at defensive tackle for LSU. Again, Relaford an end, who was part of a 4-man end rotation, which has really been pared down now to 3 defensive ends. But the big one there, of course, is Paul Mubenga being doubtful. Mubenga so far has been your starting left guard in all of your games. He started all 5 games so far at left guard, and he has played 100% of his snaps at left guard. 220 snaps on the season for Mubenga, all at left guard. And while he has struggled in run blocking, I'm looking at PFF now, Mubenga's run blocking grade is a 47.3. That is objectively very bad. His high water mark was against Florida, where his run blocking grade was a 57. Still not very good. But he's been outstanding pass blocking at left guard. His season pass blocking grade is an 82.4. 3 of the 4 games they played, he's been over an 80. Florida was 75.7. Ole Miss, not a great day for anybody. He graded out at a 62.1. But Mubenga has been really good for you in a pass blocking sense at left guard. Really, nobody else has done outstanding run blocking throughout the course of this season. So there's a chance you could be without Paul Mubenga at left guard. It's important to note that against Ole Miss, it was Cohen Eccles who replaced Paul Mubenga there. And when you look at Cohen Eccles on the season, all of his snaps. Now, remember, I told you Paul Mubenga has played 220 snaps on the season. Cohen Eccles has played 149 snaps, all of them at left guard. You don't need to memorize this, but he played 12 snaps against Clemson, 26 against Louisiana Tech, 16 against Florida, 61 against Southeastern. Of course, LSU got up big and sort of had wholesale changes, and then played 34 snaps at left guard against Ole Miss. Mubenga went down on the second series of the second half. Eccles played the rest of the game at left guard. What's interesting is that Eccles has not scored very well at all by PFF. His only grade, if you're looking at run back block or pass block, his only grade above a 60 was his pass blocking grade against Ole Miss, which was an 84.3. It's incredible. No other grade, run block or pass block, has been above a 60. The highest was his pass blocking grade against Southeastern for a 59.8. So Eccles might be a really good option on the interior from a pass blocking standpoint, but Brian Kelly's going to have a decision to make because there's 2 other options there that you could go with. Of course, one is DJ Chester, and something Brian Kelly said point blank is that Chester's sort of been the 6th man, where if anybody on that starting 5 goes out, Chester goes in. Remember, Chester started all 13 games a year ago at center. In the opener against Clemson, when Tyree Adams went down, it was DJ Chester who went at left tackle for 4 snaps. In the second week against Louisiana Tech, when Braelin Moore was injured on the first snap of the game, Chester went in at center, played the rest of the game at center. So actions speak louder than words. And the inaction against Ole Miss kind of tells you the story of where they feel maybe this evolution has happened on the offensive line. Follow me here. So Brian Kelly said Chester was sort of the 6th man, right? He was the next up on any of the 5 positions. Well, Chester was unavailable for the first half against Ole Miss because of the targeting call in the second half against Southeastern. Weston Davis goes down. You're starting right tackle with a concussion. So Carius Kern, the true freshman, starts at right tackle in that game against Ole Miss. Well, after that, at the start of the second half, they could have gone to DJ Chester. Instead, they stuck with Carius Kern. I asked Brian Kelly on Monday why they stuck with Kern.
Because what we saw in the first half, essentially, I think if there were major issues, Matt, Brad and I would have probably made a decision there to make the change. But we felt like Carius was giving us good energy. He was protecting our edge really well in the passing game. There were a couple of mistakes inside out, which we expected that was going to happen. But by and large, we felt like let's let the young guy play. And that was kind of our sense.
So they stuck with the freshman in the second half against Ole Miss instead of going to Chester. The real question right now is, do they feel like Carius Kern is one of their best 5? No, he has not played left guard. Carius Kern, his entire snap count on the season has come at right tackle. He's played 89 snaps. 100% of those snaps have been at right tackle, and he has been, in the 3 games he's played, much better as far as grading out than the other guys we just mentioned. So, as a matter of fact, against Ole Miss, his pass blocking grade was an 80.3. His run blocking grade was just a 52. But on the season, his overall grade is 67. His run blocking grade of 59. His pass blocking grade is 77. So Kern has been good, and he certainly has the highest ceiling of the guys that we just mentioned. So do you get to a point where you say, you know what? Like Brian Kelly just said, let's run the young kid out there. Is true freshman Carius Kern a better option than sophomore DJ Chester, redshirt freshman Cohen Eccles? Chester's not played at left guard this year. Eccles has played exclusively at left guard this year, but Kern might have the highest ceiling of all of them. You're at home. We don't get to see practice, so we don't know who's been running with the 1s and 2s this week at left guard. But without Paul Mubenga, you got a decision to make there among those 3 guys. Now, Brian Kelly was also asked about shuffling an offensive line in midseason, which he talks about this here. Remember, they did that in 2022. Will Campbell started he started his freshman season at left tackle. But Emory Jones was inserted as the starter in week 3. Remember, in the opener, Garrett Dellinger started at the center. Then he moved to guard, and they inserted Charles Turner. Miles Frazier was started at right tackle, moved to right guard when they inserted Emory Jones. So they shuffled in 2022 midseason. And Brian Kelly was asked about that and how they decide if they're going to shuffle midseason on the offensive line.
We've got a couple of young players. When is the right time to insert them? And I think for us, and for me in particular, inserting a young player into the lineup is when you know that one play is not going to affect his second or third or fourth or fifth play. And so emotional maturity is really, really important. We were able to play 2 freshmen here early in my career because they had emotional stability. And so gauging that with consistency in making sure that they know what they're doing every snap. I'm okay with a mistake or 2 from some young players. What I can't have is catastrophic mistakes. So that's the evaluation process really in terms of when we may insert somebody into the lineup midseason.
For what it's worth, Kern has yet to make, as Brian Kelly said it, a catastrophic mistake. He's played in 3 games. He played just 1 snap against Louisiana Tech, but then he played 26 snaps against Southeastern and 62 snaps against Ole Miss. In his 3 games, he has yet to commit a penalty. He's allowed just 2 pressures, has not allowed a sack. So he's been good and avoided that, as Brian Kelly said, a catastrophic mistake. Could we be inching closer to seeing Carius Kern get that start at left guard? Possibly, but you've got 3 options there if Paul Mubenga is out. You've got Cohen Eccles, DJ Chester, and the 5-star freshman Karius Kern. As far as the current offensive lineman and the offensive structure as it sits right now, how do they improve? Well, Braelin Moore talked about that. Brian Kelly talked about that when they met with reporters this week. We'll jump into some of what those guys had to say as we continue here. It is Locked on LSU, your team every day. Today's episode is brought to you by SupplyHouse. When the opening whistle blows on a new repair, get your crew moving forward with SupplyHouse. Order today and see parts on your doorstep tomorrow. Over 280,000 plumbing, HVAC, and electrical items from the most trusted brands in the business. Their real-time inventory and honest lead times keep you from punting projects, while their industry-leading customer service always has your blind side covered. Need parts fast for a project? Well, SupplyHouse has next day delivery. So, talk about a game changer. Join the free Trademaster program today and score serious perks like priority shipping, lower prices, and dedicated support line. Visit supplyhouse.com to sign up for free and use promo code SHCollege5 for 5% off your order. That's supplyhouse.com. Real people, real service. And today's also brought to you by FanDuel. The NFL season is here, and FanDuel has an offer you don't want to miss. Right now, new customers can bet just $5 and get $300 in bonus bets if you win. That's right. Pick a bet, put down $5, and if it hits, you'll unlock $300 in bonus bets to use across the app. I love how FanDuel gives me so many ways to play. Watching football makes it even more exciting when you've got a little something riding on the action. Whether you're a casual fan or you love diving into the stats, FanDuel makes the game day experience so much better. So, what are you waiting for? Visit FanDuel.com to download the FanDuel app today to get started. That's FanDuel.com. So the Tigers could very well be replacing their starting left guard on the offensive line if Paul Mubenga is unable to go. And that will complicate what has already been happening right now with LSU struggling in the run game. Now, Brian Kelly, when he was on the SEC coaches teleconference, was asked kind of what he wants to see from this offense to try to get him going a little bit against South Carolina this weekend.
I think it's just tempo. I think it's cutting back on the perfect formations, right? We have a lot of pre-snap motioning and changing of formations. That slows you down a little bit, as well as, from our perspective, not having, some lock calls where let's just call it and let's roll. We've wanted to check a lot of plays at the line of scrimmage, so they have a tendency to slow you down. So where do you go from there? You go to a lot more of offensive plays that are static in their alignment and they're universal in their call. In other words, regardless of what coverage you get, you're going to be able to run these plays. So I think that's where we're moving towards, Michael, a little bit more of that, and that'll allow us to play faster.
Man, that is music to my ears. I don't know if you caught the same thing I did, but when Brian Kelly said, I think we need to cut down on the checks, effectively what he's saying there is what we've said here for a while. Look, I'm an idiot. Okay. I'm just a guy who sits at a microphone and talks. Okay. I don't break down film. I didn't play at the highest level. There is, however, sometimes things that are obvious to people who watch this game. And sometimes, especially with so much new, you want to simplify and be athletic. What slows down super athletes' thinking? And what you want to have happen is guys get so much experience and to know so much about everything involved with the playbook that they don't think as much and they just react and they let their athleticism take over. You see that a lot on defense. It's why sometimes, let's say, give you an example. Kendall Beckwith was a super athletic player. And when he showed up at LSU as a freshman, they just used him on third down pass rush situations. Hey, we don't need you to learn the whole defense. Just need you to go on the field on third down and be a super athlete and go get the quarterback. You take the thinking out of it, just go act. And Kendall Beckwith became an incredible middle linebacker. Probably would have been a first-round pick and an All-American, but for his torn ACL in that game against Florida in 2016. But the point is, you want the proverbial game to slow down. And that's when mentally you're where you need to be. Well, you have 5 new offensive linemen. You have 5 new offensive linemen that haven't played together. that are trying to learn this offense all together. And then you break the huddle, you come to the line, and then you're changing the plays. You're looking at the defense, you're checking. Call the play, run the play. That's if I could take that 40-second soundbite from Brian Kelly and boil it down, call the play, run the play. Stop checking at the line. Stop thinking about it. Just call the play, run the play, go be athletic and make plays. LSU's got tons of athletes. Call the play, run the play. It's something I would love to see happen for this team on Saturday. And that might allow them to play with more tempo because you're not listening. Nuss isn't on the headset with Joe Sloan talking to him until you're at 15 seconds left on the play clock, and then he's still checking. And we've seen this before where LSU's burn timeouts late in the play clock because they're still trying to check at the line. Call the play, run the play, and see if your athletes can go take over. Now, one thing we've also seen from LSU and something that Brian Kelly did talk about is LSU at times struggling against a three-man box. And look, that's unacceptable. You've got 5. They're rushing 3. You've got to be able to move bodies and make plays. Brian Kelly was asked why. Why have they struggled so much against a three-man box?
Pressures have not been the issue, really, because we've played pretty clean. We've given our quarterback an opportunity to throw the football in those situations. It's the drop 8. It's 8 men in coverage, and obviously it's tougher sledding that way. So to complement that, you obviously want to have a better balance of run to pass. We have not been effective enough in running the football in those three-man looks. And that's really been our focus, is running the football and being much more efficient at doing so versus 3 down and of course 4 down.
It's interesting to hear Brian Kelly say they want to be able to run the football more effectively, which I think we all know. But throughout the bye week, the thing he said they need to improve on is being more efficient in the passing game. Now, this is where you see this symbiotic relationship with the run and the pass. In order to be more efficient in the passing game, it helps, as you heard at the beginning of that clip, when you're not facing drop 8. Okay, everyone is going to be better throwing the football, no matter who quarterback, offense. You're going to be better in the passing game when you're facing 4 or 5 defensive backs as opposed to 8 defensive backs, right? It just makes sense when you have numbers. Well, how do you get numbers? Well, you effectively run the football when the other team is showing you a 3-man box. If you see 3 men at the line of scrimmage, you have to be able to run the ball effectively, which LSU to this point has not been able to do. Now, Brian Kelly also talked about balance there. And a year ago, LSU was 60-40 pass to run, 60-40 pass to run. This year, up to this point, they're 55-45. They've been more balanced, but that got out of whack against Clemson. They were 61-39. Against Clemson, they threw it 34 times. They ran it 22. That was a 61-39 split. Pass to run. You've got to be able to be willing to commit to running the football. Hopefully we see some of that. Now, the other part of that, of course, is on the offensive line. And Braelin Moore was asked, your starting center, what's missing in this running game?
We just lack details. We just lack execution. I can't tell you why that is. We're trying to figure that out. We just got to focus in more, I would say.
Well, they'll focus. They'll have an opportunity to go prove it this week, and you might very well do it with a new starting left guard if Paul Mubenga, in fact, cannot go for LSU on Saturday. Moore was also asked about some of the difficulties in shuffling the offensive line, of course, with Davis having to have or current playing right tackle with Davis out against Ole Miss, and you lost Mubenga mid-game Ole Miss, and now, of course, it looks like you're not going to have Mubenga. So who plays at left guard?
Obviously, it's hard when you don't get a ton of reps with a certain guy at guard or a certain guy at tackle, but we can't have excuses. We got to go in there and and fight, and the person that goes in there has to know what they're doing, and when they're in there, they got to go. They got to go fight.
How do you limit that confusion? Call the play, run the play. Not making a ton of calls to the line, not making a ton of checks. Call the play, run the play. Take some of the thinking out of it. See if the Tigers can do that this week against South Carolina coming into Tiger Stadium. Of course, LSU will have Garrett Nussmeier under center against South Carolina, and a couple of players, Braelin Moore and Kyle Parker, both gave their impressions of how Nuss fared during the bye week. You'll hear from them as we wrap up here. It is Locked on LSU, your team every day. Mazda crafts cars for those who do more than simply move. Mazda delivers confidence with every ride. With more IIHS Top Safety Pick Plus awards than anyone else as of August 2025, you can feel the Japanese craftsmanship in every detail. From the metallic accents to available Napa leather upholstery, you can make everyday drives feel like anything but. From smooth handling to intuitive controls, Like our players, Mazda sweats every detail because when you make every move count, impossible becomes irrelevant. Mazda, move and be moved. One of the tools that helps make a huge difference for business owners is Quo, formerly OpenPhone. It's the same great business phone system you've heard me talk about before, just with a new name. And here's why it matters. Every missed call is money left on the table. When every customer conversation counts, you need a phone system that keeps you connected 24/7. Quo is the number one business phone system that streamlines customer communications. It works right through an app on your phone or computer, so no more carrying two phones or relying on a landline. And their built-in AI agent is a total game changer. It can answer after-hours calls, it can capture leads, and keep businesses moving even when you're off the clock. See why more than 90,000 businesses trust Quo, formerly OpenPhone. Get started for free and get 20% off your first 6 months at quo.com/lockedoncollege. That's QUO.com/lockedoncollege. And if you've got existing numbers with another service, Quo will port them over at no extra charge. Quo, no missed calls, no missed customers. Well, the biggest question I think that everybody has asked as we move through this open date for LSU is about Garrett Nussmeier and his health. Brian Kelly said weeks ago, of course, that it would take the open date for Garrett Nussmeier to get fully healthy to shut him down. And now the open date is come and gone. So the question is, how does Nussmeier look? Well, there was media availability with the players over at LSU earlier this week. Kyle Parker, one of his receiving targets, gave an update on Nussmeier through his eyes.
Garrett's had a solid week so far. He's ready to get out there and go play, and just like everybody else, just focusing on the main thing, which is South Carolina, and going out there and winning.
So Kyle Parker, not really saying a whole lot. Braelin Moore, the man who's part of that battery with Garrett Nussmeier at LSU, gave his impressions of Nuss during the bye week.
Yeah, he's had a great week. I think the bye week was crucial for him and a lot of the guys to be able to, get a little healthier. But, he looks great. We just had a practice, and he was slinging it out there.
He was slinging it out there. And I think that's the thing everybody wants to see. And I think we have seen that. I think we have seen Garrett Nussmeier out there slinging it. He was certainly throwing the ball quite well against Southeastern Louisiana, and you can roll your eyes and say it's Southeastern. If you're an everydayer, you've heard me say it plenty. You're probably sick of hearing me say it by this point. It's less about beating up on an FCS team. It's way, 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 way more about the opportunity that Nussmeier had, stretching the ball down the field, throwing with zip and accuracy, throwing on the run, throwing across his body, all the physical ability that we know Garrett Nussmeier has. He showed that against Southeastern. I don't think he regressed against Ole Miss physically. I think it was just quite literally the point of view where you're talking about a guy that it was facing drop 8 coverage, and it was really difficult to try to pass the football in those situations. But when you look at Garrett Nussmeier, my goodness, this season he's been so effective and so efficient until the Ole Miss game. I mean, looking at his PFF grades, remember Nussmeier was the National Player of the Week against Clemson. He was consistently among LSU's top graded offensive players each week. Against Clemson, against Louisiana Tech, Florida, Southeastern. And then he had a bad day. We had a bad day against Ole Miss where he threw a couple of balls up for grabs, which you certainly can't do. He was facing drop 8 coverage. He was probably really frustrated, and LSU wasn't running the football. So I think you'll know pretty early on in this game. If they're attempting passes down the field, if Nuss is moving and throwing on the run and zipping balls in there with accuracy, you'll know if he physically feels and looks like Garrett Nussmeier. But as we've said all along, the key to LSU's offense getting going is less about Garrett Nussmeier being physically healthy. It's more about LSU's offense being able to complement each other. Can the run game get going? Remember, you're 15th in the SEC running the football. The team that's 16th dead last is the team you're playing in South Carolina. If you're able to run the ball, you bring defenders into the box. It's going to soften up the zone. It's going to bring a safety down instead of playing too high. Maybe you see a single high safety. Maybe you bring those linebackers close to the line of scrimmage. It opens up the middle of the field. All of that works together. It'll be really interesting to see if LSU use this time in the bye week to try to get a little more efficient and more effective in the run game. And if they're able to do that, does that then in turn open up the pass game? We're just a few days now from finding out. Of course, mention that South Carolina, on the flip side of it, has really struggled this year offensively. It's just a season where Carolina came in with a quarterback in Lenore Sellers, who everyone anticipated. He was voted the preseason SEC first team All SEC quarterback, and it just hasn't materialized for Sellers. He's rushed on the season for under 100 yards, and this is a South Carolina offense that's 100th in the country in scoring at 24.8 points per game, and that is actually magnified by the fact that they've had 6 non-offensive touchdowns. So for LSU's defense, task is pretty simple. Like, they're going to try to run the football with Sellers. They ran it on 14 of 15 plays in the second half against Kentucky. Can you play big boy football against South Carolina, limit that run, make Lenore Sellers beat you throwing the football, shorten that game if you can? I think LSU is going to have a really good day on on Saturday against South Carolina. Hey, as we move throughout this week, we are scheduled to have a crossover episode with my buddy Chris Marler, the host of Locked On Gamecocks. Of course, Chris Marler also works with us as our SEC writer for LouisianaSports.net. So Chris has spent a lot of his life on the East Coast, not only in Atlanta, but also in Columbia, South Carolina. So knows an awful lot about the Gamecocks. He's not a Gamecock fan, but that's perfectly fine. He knows a lot about the team. He does Locked On Gamecocks, and we're looking forward to that crossover episode to learn more about this South Carolina team. And, it's interesting because they have been very effective scoring non-offensive touchdowns. They did lose a lot of key defenders from a year ago, and the offense has really struggled to get going. So the big question is why, and how can they possibly do it on the road at night in Tiger Stadium against that defense? A really steep hill to climb. But we will have your Locked On crossover episode with Chris Marler of Locked On Gamecocks coming up here this week. Okay, that's going to do it for us here on today's episode of Locked On LSU, and we're so glad to have you aboard with us here every single day. We always thank you for making us your first listen. Now, for your second listen, how about you check out Locked On SEC? My guy Chris Gordy breaks down the best conference in college sports, from the rivalries to the championship and every game in between. You can find Locked On SEC on YouTube or wherever you listen to podcasts, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Okay, that'll do it for us here. If you are listening on podcast, please subscribe on your favorite podcast app. Rate us, leave a review. If you're on YouTube, please smash that like button, subscribe to the channel, and hit the bell so you're notified whenever we post a new video. Please let a friend know that if they love the Tigers, we got you here every single day for Locked On LSU. It's your team every day.